I'm telling you, humans must be telepathic. Crix exclaimed as he set his tray down at the cafeteria table where his friends were seated. It's the only explanation that makes sense. His three friends, all members of different alien species, who had come together at the Interstellar Academy, glanced at each other in confusion. What in the galaxy makes you think humans are telepathic? Asked Mega, an insect-like alien with large compound eyes and antennae. I've never noticed anything special about their mental abilities. It's the way they communicate without words, Crix insisted. Haven't you noticed how easily they interpret facial expressions, subtle shifts in tone of voice, and body language? It's uncanny. Many species are adept at nonverbal communication, not just humans, pointed out Clax, whose people had evolved from avian ancestors. Yes, but not to the degree the humans demonstrate, said Crix. I share several classes with them, and I've watched them closely. They're constantly exchanging glances and gestures loaded with meaning, and they always seem to understand what each other is thinking or feeling based on the tiniest cues. Sibo, an amphibious alien, bobbed his head thoughtfully. Now that you mention it, I have observed the human students behaving as if they're reading each other's minds. But I thought it was just a feature of their culture's communication norms. Well, there's definitely more to it than that, Crix said. I think they evolved telepathic abilities because they lack so many other sensory capabilities. They can't detect chemicals, electricity, fluctuations in atmospheric pressure, or magnetic fields like many other species can. Maybe psychic powers developed to compensate so they could understand each other better. An interesting hypothesis, said Clax, preening her feathers. But if they do have such an incredible ability, why hide it from the rest of the galactic community? Crix waved his upper appendages. Who knows why those crazy humans do anything? Remember how long it took them to announce the full extent of their physical strength in higher gravities? They kept it secret for ages until an independent scientific study exposed it. They do seem to enjoy surprising other species. Mega said with a chuckle. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, Crix declared. I have a plan to prove whether or not humans can read minds. His three friends leaned in, their curiosity piqued. They listened eagerly as Crix outlined his idea. The next day, Crix entered the spacious atrium-like area where students gathered between classes. Standing on an elevated platform in the center was Professor Zebon, Crix's astrogation instructor. A gaggle of humans were gathered at the base of the platform, peppering the professor with questions. Crix knew Professor Zebon disliked the gruff, loud humans, though the professor was too polite to show it overtly. He wondered if the humans could psychically detect Zebon's distaste for their behavior. As Crix drew closer, he saw the professor's tentacles trembling slightly, belying his calm words. One of the humans, a tall male named John, gave the professor a sharp look. He said something to his classmates in their own language, and they quieted down, backing away from the platform. John then made an odd bowing gesture to Professor Zebon before leading the other humans out of the atrium. Crix's eyes widened in astonishment. There was no way the human could have understood the professor's actual feelings without telepathic powers. He had known Zebon was becoming truly aggravated despite the professor's mild words and neutral expression. Astounded, Crix hurried to tell his friends what he had witnessed. All right, that is pretty convincing, admitted Zebo later when Crix described the incident. But we need more proof before we can be certain. I agree, said Mega. Let's all go to one of the recreational lounges during a busy period. If the humans are telepaths, they should respond to the moods and thoughts of students around them even if they try to hide it. The group headed to a popular lounge in the west wing of the academy. As expected, the large room was filled with students relaxing between classes or socializing after lectures. About a dozen humans were interspersed among the diverse gathering. Crix and his friends split up to mingle and discreetly observe. Clax positioned herself near a table where two human females sat studying. Mega hovered around three male humans playing a virtual game. Xebio pretended to read information on a nearby terminal while watching two human couples laughing together on cushions. As his friends eavesdropped on the unsuspecting humans' interactions, Crix chose to observe from a short distance away. Over the next 20 minutes, he scrutinized the body language, facial expressions, and reactions of the humans. What he noticed amazed him. When a frustrated Brazook stumbled by, griping softly to himself, The two human females glanced up in perfect synchronicity, frowns of concern on their faces, though the Brazuc was nowhere near them. The three human males paused their game and turned as one toward a weeping Krillian student, hurrying from the lounge, their faces filled with compassion. And when an attendant entered pushing a trolley loaded with tasty-smelling snacks, the humans brightened instantly before the attendant had announced her wares or anyone else had visibly reacted to her arrival. There was no longer any doubt in Crix's mind. The humans did indeed possess telepathy. It was the only explanation for their consistent display of emotional sensitivity and understanding way beyond what eyes, ears, or noses could account for. They were receiving psychic impressions from those around them, probably automatically without trying. Crix caught his friend's eyes across the lounge and tilted his head meaningfully toward the door, signaling them to exit. They had the proof they needed. Now they had to decide whether to publicly share what they had discovered or keep the human special ability to themselves. Crix and his friends chose to remain silent. They feared if the rest of the galaxy learned how exceptionally skilled humans were at interpreting emotions, thoughts, and intentions, many species would become paranoid and anxious interacting with them. Humans might face discrimination or unfair expectations to be perpetually gentle, kind, and careful in all communications. Yet the four friends couldn't resist hinting to the humans that their secret was uncovered. They went out of their way to greet the humans. They knew with deeper bows and more elaborate gestures of respect, paying them sincere compliments on their perceptiveness and consideration. The humans seemed pleasantly bemused by the unusual treatment at first, but comprehension slowly dawned in their eyes. Crix fancied he could detect many unspoken questions behind their smiles. One day, Crix was studying alone when John, the tall human from Professor Zeban's class, approached his table. "Do you mind if I join you?" The human asked. "No, not at all," Crix responded, trying not to let the fact a human was singling him out making him nervous. Was John about to psychically extract the full story of what he and friends had discovered? John sat down across from Crix, watching him intently for a long moment with his odd round pupils. Just when Crix thought he might crack under the intense gaze, John broke into a broad grin. "You figured us out, didn't you?" Crix jerked in surprise. Trying to appear nonchalant, he replied. "Oh, figured what out about your people exactly?" John laughed, a loud booming sound that made Crix flinch. "No need to pretend, friend," he said. "We know you and your buddies realized our empathic abilities are more than what meets the eye, or rather, more than what meets the eye, ear, nose, or tongue." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "We don't actually have psychic powers, you know. Sure, we can't detect chemical signals or electricity like some species, but we evolved extremely advanced skills at noticing and interpreting subtle cues most other races miss. Tiny facial movements, micro-expressions, infinitesimal vocal tone changes, fractional posture shifts. We register them all on an unconscious level." Crix's mouth fell open in shock. "You mean you just have superior sensory capabilities, not telepathy itself?" he asked incredulously. "Yep," John said. "Our brains are uniquely wired to discern patterns and meanings in the smallest nonverbal signals. Pretty cool, huh?" "I suppose," Crix said slowly, feeling a bit deflated now that the wondrous mystery was explained. "But that still doesn't account for how you seem capable of literally reading emotions, moods, and even thoughts. Like when you knew Professor Zeban was getting upset the other day before he outwardly showed it." "Ah," that John said, scratching his chin. "Honest mistake people make all the time. You see, humans are extremely good at deduction too, not just picking up on unconscious cues. After interacting with the professor in class, I could tell he found us humans a bit much to handle at times with our noisy, rambunctious behavior. I figured if we crowded him with too many questions again so soon, he'd start feeling irritated regardless of how polite he acted." "I see," Crix said slowly. "So while you don't have actual telepathic powers, your people certainly excel at social awareness and perception compared to the rest of us." "We do work hard at it," John acknowledged. He clapped Crix genially on the upper appendages. "But don't sell your people short either. Like Professor Zeban says, we all have room for improvement when communicating with those outside our cultures." He stood and gave Crix an odd little bow. "So in the spirit of interspecies cooperation, want to grab a juice with me at the corner cafe?" "Sure," Crix said, startled but pleased at the invitation. Maybe he had even more yet to learn about humans and their remarkable abilities to connect.